Welcome back to Travel Like an Oching. Today is a special day. What I have for you is a review of all the food that I had on Carnival's Sunrise. So I'm going to tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly, and also talk a little bit about the cruise overall. There are some interesting things to talk about, and we'll do that right after this. Thank you for being with us today. All right, before we begin, I do want to set the context of what I'm about to talk about. You have to understand that I was scheduled for a back-to-back-to-back cruise, which meant I was first going to be on Virgin Voyages, then I was going to be on Royal Caribbean, and then finally the third cruise was going to be Carnival. So at this point in my trip, I was on that third leg of this, which is Carnival. The original ship I was supposed to be on was the Horizon. However, the Horizon broke down and we were informed that we were switched over to the Sunrise. I didn't get the official email of my ship being changed until the Thursday before I was supposed to be at the cruise, which means I was still on my Royal Caribbean cruise before I even knew that my cruise is shipped. On top of that, my port was the port of Miami. So I had all three cruises leaving out of Miami for obvious logistical reasons. I didn't want to have to travel around. The new cruise on Sunshine was over in Fort Lauderdale. So not only did my cruise change while I was on my other cruise, but it switched to port as well. Carnival did set up transportation from the airport to the cruise terminal for those people who had travel plans and they were flying in on day of. It didn't take into account for people who had already had their plans, like myself and many others, and I ended up having to spend about $67 Uber from the port of Miami over to the port of Fort Lauderdale. I didn't get a lot of time to know that my ship had changed. So I didn't even know what ship I was going to until I read that email and had to prepare myself for that switch. I didn't have say into what alternative cruise I was going on. There were two ships that Carnival made available to split those individuals up onto those two cruises so that we would still have our cruise. I guess the positive thing in this is Carnival could have canceled the entire thing and then I wouldn't have had any cruise. The reality is they put us on a different boat, which we had no say in. They told us to go to a different cruise port, which people who didn't fly in day of the cruise and get to the airport wouldn't have transportation to the new location. And it was beginning to be stressful right from the beginning. From what I also understand with the ship that we were going on is it just came out of a refurbishment. Well, what does that mean? It went over a multi-million-dollar upgrade of the ship, and we were going to be the first folks on that ship. On top of that, the crew was grabbed from various parts of the Carnival Corporation and put on that ship to be able to service the guests. So they literally just pulled them together very last minute and put them on the ship. That's kind of that context that we were going into. The guests were very apprehensive, I'll say, at this point. Apprehension did turn to something else later on, but I'm foreshadowing. To expect the types of service that we were supposed to get on the Horizon, as well as paying for what we actually paid for, cruise on a newer boat, and the fact that the upgrades to the Sunrise didn't seem like it was upgraded. I just looked down at the floor And now remember, this boat was supposed to be newly renovated. They didn't even bother putting a new coat of paint on the boat. It was very gray, very dirty, very dated looking. It just certainly did not seem like it was an upgrade. I also noticed throughout the ship that there were multiple areas that needed to be fixed still. Challenges we had in the cabins. I could tell you one quick story of an individual who was in the Havana suites on the Horizon, and then was given a cabin accommodation on this boat that we're all on now, that was on the lowest possible level and right next, the very last cabin before you get to the cruise cabins. Very disappointing for those folks, because they certainly paid a premium price for their Havana suites, which are suites that sit at the aft of the boat, the rear of the boat, and they have a tremendous view. There are terraces, and it's built up, and it's beautiful. And that did not exist on the boat that we're on now. And insult to injury, instead of putting those folks into a suite, say, for example, they placed them in a regular cabin that was right next to the crew's quarters. The crew was great, no complaint about them, but that was a very high traffic area. So the people could barely sleep or have private time, because they always heard traffic in the hall, talking, so forth and so on, because of the high traffic area. On top of that, later on in the cruise, there was an issue with a broken pipe, and literally that whole area flooded. Carnival decided to move them to more suitable accommodations. This is the context I'm talking about. It's going to be an uphill battle to please just about anyone on this cruise at this point. One would hope that their service was top-notch, to say the least, that there weren't going to be many service issues. That's where I'm at. That's the context of going into this review, and where there would be issues, that they would actually bend over backwards to rectify those issues. And with that, that's the context. I will talk specifically about my dining options. The majority of the time that I was on the cruise, I did partake in the regular ship dining. I did have 2 meals that were in the specialty dining, and before I talk about food service and what I consider the winners and losers of the cruise, I want to highlight my philosophy on how I thought I should have been treated. For example, I was definitely a single cruiser. They knew that ahead of time. It's written on the computer. Based off of that, I would hope that they take that into consideration, just so that I didn't have to tell them that I was a single diner. So one of the biggest issues I had was when I got to the maitre d', who was the nicest person in the world. Now, little backstory on this. I purposefully had my dining experience around 7 p.m. I didn't want it too early, where there'd be probably a rush of people. I didn't want it too late, because I didn't want to put any undue pressure on the wait staff that would be helping me out while I was there. That being said, I always ate around 7:30, latest 8 o'clock. So kind of right in that middle sweet spot. And the dining room was pretty big. I really enjoyed my seat, or at least my vantage point, because it allowed me as a single diner to kind of observe people the way I like to do, and to take notes on what was going on. The problems began with my table assignment. I'm sitting there, so as I'm walking down the corridor and the person's looking at the piece of paper that was handed to them by the maitre d', they walk me over to a booth that sits 6 people. I looked at the guy and said, "Are any of these other tables available? Why are you sticking me in a booth? I'm eating alone. You guys know that. So please sit me at one of these 2 tops." He understood what I was asking for, and he agreed, and he smiled, and he was accommodating, and he sat me down at a table set for 2. I said to him on a couple occasions, "I'm dining alone." I made sure of that, because he put down 2 menus, and I said I won't be needing the second menu because I'm dining alone. The very next action I expected from this person would be not only to take the extra menu away, but to clear the other place setting. Why? Because as a single diner, I didn't want people to look at me sitting alone with an empty dining spot like I was stood up for dinner, right? I didn't want to be a loser. I was dining alone, and it would have certainly looked that way. So I expected them to remove the extra plate. Perhaps by the end of the bread course, they'll remove that other place setting. It didn't happen. And to make matters worse, the ship photographer comes by, says, "Can I take your picture?" I was like, "Absolutely not. I'm sitting here alone with an empty place setting here. Imagine the picture that's going to be sitting up on the ship. Who's that lonely guy with no one to cruise with?" Maybe I'm overthinking that, but that's certainly how I felt. Finally, I said to my waitstaff person, "Are you going to remove that extra setting?" "Oh, you want it removed?" Like it was like something they never heard of. I was like, "Yes, I'm dining alone. You know I'm dining alone. You took one order from me. Why would I want that other place setting sitting there?" Okay. We'll remove it. So they removed everything. Needless to say, I was displeased with that and asked them on subsequent nights, because this was the first dinner. I had several throughout the week. "Would you please remember, because these crews, they you get kind of the same person or the same area to sit to eat, and you have the same crew, so they learn your name, they learn your preferences, so forth and so on. So at the very least, if I was being a pain in the neck, they now know my preference, and they should honor that preference." Let me tell you, I went back there, and the first 3 days, the exact same thing happened. They tried to sit me at a table that was inappropriately too large, and they never removed the place settings. I had a conversation with one of my waitstaff people, and he said, "Mr. Eric, what can I do to give you better service?" I said, "Well, you guys are doing an okay job. I never want to put down waitstaff because I know how hard they work, and I'm really not a prima donna. It's just like basic stuff that I expect. And when you hear some of these challenges I had with the food, I think you could appreciate just me being a little perturbed, just a little." I said, "Yeah, I'd like to share with you how I really feel, but I don't want to be mean." He said, "Nope, I want you to be as brutally honest as you can, because that's the only way I'm going to get better." And I really appreciated that attitude, because it wasn't about him. It wasn't ego. He was genuinely trying to figure out how he could serve not only me better, but any other person that he encountered better. So I outlined the things that I just talked about with you about, if you have a single diner, remove the other cutlery or and other things on there, so that the person A doesn't feel like, out of place just eating alone with another place setting. But two, that stuff never really needs to be there, because when they bought me my food, all that other stuff was crowding around it anyway, and it just made it awkward. I also wanted to try the 3 specialty dining restaurants, so that would have taken me out of the main dining, and they would have missed that opportunity to correct their service error, at least in my eyes. I have to say that I did return to the restaurant the following evening, and much to my he did exactly that. He saw when I came in, the maitre d' had put me wherever she was going to put me. He took care of me. He made sure I sat at a table, not the same one that I had the other nights, but a 2-top table, and he immediately removed the silverware and the place setting, and took care of me from that point on. This waitstaff person who genuinely wanted me to have a great experience, and they took care of me. I don't know what was wrong in the kitchen. Regardless, my evaluation of the food, I'll tell you in a moment. But just overall, it's not just the food. It was basic service and understanding your customer. And I'm going to talk about 9 specific meals, dinners, food combinations that were particularly bad. Now, mind you, these aren't individual nights. So some nights there were combinations of these things, because obviously with the 7-day cruise and I have 9 complaints, that math doesn't add up. In some instances, 2 or 3 items were together. One night I got the fried chicken. Now, I wasn't expecting KFC, and I wasn't expecting grandma's home recipe. I was expecting something in the middle. I'll tell you that when I saw the chicken, I looked at it, I was like, ooh, there's no moisture in that chicken anywhere. I could see that it wasn't moist, but I was like, looks could be deceiving. let me take a look. Let me try to take a bite. There's some mashed potatoes and an au jus or a gravy. I'm saying au jus because it wasn't a thick gravy that I was expecting. It was a little runny, and that's part of the complaint. But it could have been an au jus, and I'm okay with that. It's a thinner gravy, right? So I'm not going to beat him up on that. But that chicken had to be the driest and the most unappetizing. I feel bad for the bird that gave its life for the end product that ended up on the plate. It was hard. It was dried out. It was inedible. I took one bite and it wasn't even like a crunchy bite. It literally felt like I was biting into I don't even know how to describe it. It was just a very horrible experience. And I wasn't trying to be dainty and cut it with a knife or what have you. I picked up the chicken with two hands and then took the bite. I then said, okay, I'm not making any headway doing it this way. Let me try with a fork and knife to cut this chicken and maybe put some sauce on it and then get along that way. Again, very tough to do. Even the outer coating, sometimes if the interior is really dry, you can get away with just eating the outside, which is basically the skin. I couldn't even do that. I then tried to use the au jus or the gravy, dip some of it in that, and the gravy was tasteless. I really didn't enjoy that. I said, okay, at least no one can mess up mashed potatoes. Even if they're instant mashed potatoes, you throw a ton of butter in them and they'll pass. Those, if you look at them, even look watery. Those are terrible as well. In any one of these instances, I could have sent back the food. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to send back the food because don't ever send back food to the kitchen, especially if you're having a bad time. I don't send food back. If it's not good, I'll just take a few bites and politely just leave it on there. And that's exactly what I did. And my waitstaff person noticed that and was like, can I get you anything else? I was like, nope, I'm good. Keep it coming. Another tasteless endeavor that I had to go through was the first night. I wanted to try both meat and non-meat options. So for my non-meat option, I chose vegetable lasagna. And this looked really good and it smelled delicious. I was just like, wow, the presentation is awesome. This looks really good. But looks can be deceiving, right? I mean, you could create a plate of food with plastic and make it look good, but you'd never want to eat it. That's what happened with this vegetable lasagna. I cut into it. First of all, it was not hot when it got to me. It cut pretty well, but the mouthfeel of the bite, it was mushy and watery. The vegetables were not crisp. They didn't seem like they were properly prepared to be put into the lasagna. Despite what it looks like there was a lot of cheese. There was a lot of surface cheese, but I saw very little ricotta. At the very least, give me a good sauce with the noodles, cheese, and I'll just pretend the vegetables were meat, which I thought I could do. I couldn't do that with this lasagna. It was really bad. Another night I had chicken parm, and I have the picture of the chicken parm right here. Now, if you look at that, it looks appetizing. It really does. It was laying on a bed of spaghetti. The chicken parm looked delish. The cheese looked delish. The chicken parm suffered the same affliction that the fried chicken did. They overcooked it, and they cooked it to death. On top of that, I was like, okay, I messed up the chicken. I scraped off some of the cheese, had some of that. Maybe the spaghetti will save this dish. Oh my gosh. They messed up spaghetti. The sauce, I don't know how they made the sauce. Sometimes you really can't make I don't even want to say spicy sauce. You can't really make a true sauce because you have so many different types of palates, and you got to really genericize the meal so that you fit a wide audience. But even as much salt and pepper as I put on that thing, I couldn't bring it back to life. That spaghetti was disgusting. Spaghetti should be al dente. This was less than al dente. It was almost crunchy. So they significantly undercooked the spaghetti. And again, this was not a busy dining hall. It wasn't like it was a weird request. This was one of the dishes that they had as one of the nightly favorites. They couldn't get it right. One of my appetizers, which I was very disappointed in, is I got some tomato soup. Again, it looked delicious. I mean, look at the presentation of this soup, right down to the sprinkling of the not vegetables, but the chopped parsley, or it wasn't parsley, it was basil, looked like basil, chopped basil, chiffonaded basil on top of the soup. Looked really good, and the color was great. The taste was lacking. It was really not there. I could have dunked some tomatoes in water and come up with a better taste than what I got. There was really no body to the soup. It was very thin. It just wasn't the type of soup that I would consider very palatable. So 2 bites of that, and I pushed that to the side. But I felt bullied into getting the shot at dinner. So for a couple nights, there was a guy trying to push shots, and you got a souvenir glass with it, a souvenir shot glass, which I like. I still have, and I'm displaying it on my shot glass mantle because it was a cool shot glass. But I totally felt bullied into getting the shot. Believe it or not, they did a great job. I mean, I was like, nope, 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 nope. And I did this over a series of days. And literally the last night I was in the dining hall, he basically said, listen, I'm giving you a shot. You should try it. You've been here the whole week and you haven't tried the shot. I was just like, okay, I'll try the shot. Yeah, it was a shot. I mean, it was okay. But it made my loser list because I succumbed to peer pressure. Not the fault of the ship. That was totally my weakness. And I'm admitting it. They got me to get a shot. I got one. This is kind of a funny one. And the picture I'm showing of this creme brulee, take a look at it. It kind of looks right. But I'll tell you, when that thing came out to me, it was still moving. It had more movement than any Jell-O recipe you've ever had. They bought me a raw creme brulee. And he put it down on my table, and he basically said, there you go. And I was like, what is that? At first, I didn't even want a dessert, right? I had such a terrible time with dinner. They talked me into a dessert. Now, you might think I have a weak mind, or, you know, the force isn't strong with me because they kept doing a Jedi mind trick. I kept falling for it, but I was trying to give them something positive. So he said, would you like dessert? No. Are you sure, sir? No. Take a look at the menu, sir. Okay, I'll take a look. There's a fruit plate. You can't mess up fruit and cheese. So I'll have the fruit and cheese plate. No, you gotta try a creme brulee. It's the best. Okay, I'll try the creme brulee. He brings it out and it's raw. It's jiggling. I said, dude, this is not creme brulee. It's not cooked. Yes, it is, sir. It's not. That's the way it's supposed to be. I said, well, please have the chef come out. I've had it. I have to talk to them. He said, okay, wait a minute. I'll come back. And then what you see in the pictures is what they bought back. And as you look at that, you can see that whoever got it in the back must have just turned on the flamethrower and just torched it, because when it came back, what they did to it is they made it inedible, right? So it wasn't anything like a good creme brulee with a light crusting of the sugars on top and a nice custard underneath. It was now, a scrambled egg with the burnt top. So that's how that ended. Now, again, I figured I'm going to give them something easy that they can't mess up, and I'm just going to pray. I asked for strawberry ice cream. Oh my goodness. I don't know where they got the strawberry ice cream. It was sans the strawberry, and it was sans the ice cream. It literally tasted like they froze some pink water, scraped it, and served it up. It had very little to no taste. It tasted like it had freezer burn, and it was not good. However, I was hungry that night because I didn't have much of my meal. I ended up finishing that ice cream, or more like a frozen Slurpee. The other night they had a very interesting looking dessert. There was supposed to be a cinnamon component, I guess. It didn't taste like cinnamon. It just tasted like overly fried dough. Didn't have a sugar taste or anything. And I was very disappointed in that taste. So again, both desserts were a nightmare. Didn't enjoy them at all. And then I left the best for last. So one of the nights, of course, is a themed night. I don't want to say themed night, but a night where they do the surf and turf. I'm seafood averse. My daughters will say, it's psychosomatic, but I can't have seafood. I told them that, so the surf part of the turf was not going to be an option for me. And they were like, no problem. We got the best prime rib. You will like it. I'm not even going to go into how disgusted I was with this prime rib and give you a few seconds to look at it. All in all, I did not enjoy my time in the My Dining experience on the Sunrise. I will say, though, on the positive side, is I had a wholly different experience going to the specialty dining, which you have to pay an extra fee for. But believe me, it was well worth paying that fee so I can just get a basic meal. But the meal that came with the ship or my fare was just not worth it. And it was quite disgusting, to be honest with you. And shame on the kitchen staff for serving the stuff that they served. I'm sure there are tons of other people that had great service and great food in the main dining, but the stuff that I got was not up to snuff. And I'm saying my truth, and that's what it was for me. And yeah, so that's what I have to say about that. I certainly hope you enjoyed this episode of Travel Like an Oching. As always, I welcome all of my people to continue watching these continuing journeys. If you enjoyed my content, please support me by a simple like and subscribe. Thank you again, and until next time, remember to like and subscribe and click that bell